Hello, oodles and noodles. I have returned from the ether yet again to do another review. Today I wanted to talk about Tad Williams' War of the Flowers, which is really unique considering that as someone who became quite popular due to his Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, he really went 360 degrees in the other direction. There's certainly a little bit of his flair and that the same kind of flow that you would find in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, but it's really different. So those of you who have read his Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, it's very much a high fantasy sort of. There's not elves, but there's kind of that world's kind of elves. There's the typical magic, the dark baddie, that kind of thing. Traditional high fantasy. In the War of the Flowers, there's a lot of Neil Gaiman being channeled into this book, as far as I'm concerned. Now, what we have here is a portal fantasy. Guy gets transported into another world. There's fae, there's magic, there's a lot of odd things going on, and our dude is just confused out of his goddamn mind. And that pretty much sums up the entire story throughout the whole book, and that's what makes it incredible. So we have our main character, Theo. He is a 30-something-year-old singer who is pretty much just kind of coasting through life. He hasn't really accomplished much. He's not really doing much of anything with himself. He's kind of going from one group to another. He's a good singer, but he's never capitalized on it really. He's not really doing much of anything with his life. Unfortunately for him, or fortunately, depending on things, how you view things, he's got a kid on the way, and he has a relationship, and he thinks, that's going to be it. He's going to have his child, he's going to be a dad, and, everything's going to be all right. Of course, this goes down the drain. A lot of horrible things happen. Horrible things. And he gets pulled into this magical world. And this magic world in here is completely based in a Fae society. So the Fae have always existed. This is why we have all these myths and tales of it in our world. It's because the two worlds are interconnected in a very big way. And he has to explore this world, survive in this world, while being chased and used and abused in various ways by these different Fae and the factions and the different noble houses that exist within this world. And it is witty and sarcastic and deprecating and just most of the time bleeding into the kind of this negative, despairing kind of thematic that you really have to appreciate Neil Gaiman's style, where there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of not a clear line necessarily between good and evil, although I will say, the main enemies in this novel are quite clearly the bad guys, but there's so much gray along the way that I really enjoy that. I don't like it when an enemy is just, I'm bad because I'm bad and that's it. And even our main antagonist in this novel he's not evil in the typical way, because for him to be that would mean that he's outside of the norm. He's some kind of really bad person, but within the culture of Fae, within how they view themselves and how the interactions between the different classes are, he's actually pretty typical. He's more of a norm than anything. He just goes the extra step, which makes him the biggest problem for our main character and the side characters, his little support cast that he has around him. There isn't a very strong support cast. There's one character who's very enjoyable. Very enjoyable, a little Fae fairy lady who follows along with our main character, who's got an attitude enough for 5,000 large people, which is really fun to see their little banter going back and forth. At the same time as she has such an attitude, she's also teaching Theo in small different ways about the problems with his personality. Theo is very much the kind of person who, in his own way, has sort of given up on life and now has to sort of decide what he wants to be, who he wants to be. And it's not this grand change. He doesn't gain huge powers. He doesn't, have some great prophecy to him or whatnot. He's just someone who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time in a certain way. Can't say more without ruining the story, but he has some backstory to him that makes it, I don't even want to say makes him quite necessary to the story. He's never really that necessary to the story. He has something about him that's important, but it could have been anyone. The story just kind of throws that in there to make him have some sort of purpose. But really what's happening in this is that you're following along with a person pulled into a magical world as that person just gets shunted around. Theo has nothing special about him. He's just an ordinary Joe. And because of that, he is a great witness to the mystery and oddness of this magical world. And I think that's actually really, really fascinating to see. He's not a person who's just going to merge into the world and become this great heroic person. He's, John down the street who got pulled into a world, has no idea what the hell is happening, and is just running around trying to figure things out, as other people who actually understand what's going on save his ass most of the time. Which makes it quite different from most novels. You see this a lot in certain tales, like Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. So Neil Gaiman just does that really well in most of his novels, even when the character is much more of a strong, tough character who gets involved a little bit more. There are still most of the time people who are just getting dragged along as things happen. Neil is really good at that, and Tad really captured that as well. He also really captured that mystery, that mystique of the Fae world, and how strange everything is. Not just to a human, just in general. He made a world that's vibrant and alive and organic and is constantly shifting and changing, and there's so much to see and so many glimpses that we get into this world and the lives of the Fae that are living there, and there's hundreds of different kinds of Fae, and it would have been great to have even more. I would have loved to explore the world even more. Even then, there's still only one book in this it's not a series, basically, it's just a singular novel, but there is like 800 pages. It's a hefty book. 800 pages in paperback is very, very large. So effectively, you could say this is like two books merged into one, but I enjoyed it a lot. There's definitely tons and tons of flaws. One, as much as I enjoyed Theo as a character, many people might say that he's quite aggravating. He doesn't really do much of anything. There's not a lot of development, not on a huge level. He gets understanding as he goes along in the novel, but he doesn't really change to a drastic degree. It's more so that the novel is leading him to kind of figure things out as he goes along. So he's not changing per se, more so discovering things. And then what he's going to do with that information after the novel's done is probably where our thoughts are meant to go, but we're not really seeing it to a large degree. The support cast, like I said, there is one character who's really, really fascinating and fun to be along with, but most of the rest just kind of serve a vague purpose. Again, because there's so much mystery and everything is kind of left vague in many senses, we don't get a full understanding of what's going on in many parts of the story, but I like that. I don't know if many people will. It depends on how you like your story. If you're like someone who wants to have all the answers given to you, who wants to understand every single aspect of what went wrong, what went on, then you might not like this story as much. It's slow. It has a lot of action, but not action the way we traditionally think of action. It's action more so in the sense of our character getting attacked or attacks happening and then we're running away or barely surviving. So you're not going to get a lot of big magic. You're not going to get a lot of crazy stuff going on in terms of our main character doing something. It's more so him just being stuck in the moment and reacting and trying to survive, which is fun in its own way. I think of this book much more in terms of world building, in the sense of it's showcasing off a really, really fascinating world and leaving it to your imagination what could be there. And that's nice every once in a while. It's definitely not the kind of book that I would want to read, all the time, because it can be a little bit frustrating. Neil Gaiman, as much as I love Neil Gaiman, he has a tendency to do that also. He opens up these little doors into different worlds, but then never explores them fully. We're just kind of left to wonder about it, and it can be frustrating. But if you like that kind of thing, if you like fae, if you like magic, if you like weirdness, if you like just the mystery and wonder of magic in and of itself, then this is really cool. Now, of course, I've barely touched upon the main premise of the whole story, which there are multiple things going on in this novel, so there's no way really for me to express it without ruining aspects of it for someone who hasn't read it before. But there's many plot points all happening, different people all coming together for different reasons, all trying to change this world and change society as a whole, some for good, some for bad, some for just their own personal gain because they're messed up in their heads. And all those interconnected storylines make the world come alive even more. It's really, really vibrant. So again, it can be frustrating as a novel, but it can also be really, really fulfilling depending on how you come at it. If you come at it in the right way, which I think is just to try to think of it as an exploratory journey, it's a great book for ideas. It's a great book to read and just be like, oh, that's really cool. I like the way the author did this. I like these little flourishes and touches that he gave to the world that don't really mean anything to the story overall, but just add a depth to things while simultaneously keeping everything, as I said, more of a mystery. So you don't really ever get fully fulfilled in terms of getting all the answers that you want, but at least you are left kind of with this sense of gentle wonder. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend this. It's definitely not the kind of book you're going to read and reread and reread again, but the first time is super, super enjoyable, and it's the kind of novel that leads you to be more introspective. So if you like something that just makes you think and wonder and imagine how you would handle things and what it would be like to have these kinds of mysteries in the world, this is going to be the book for you. If you want something that has a lot more, how can I say this? If you want something where the main character does a lot more and has a lot more meaning and purpose within the story, this is not going to be for you. So I wouldn't waste my time after. But overall, I think Tad did a really great job, especially considering how he was coming from such a different style of novel with the Memory of Sorrow and Thorn books. So I loved it a lot. It's a really, really great book, and has a pretty cool cover. Miss Theo. Hate that hair. It's terrible hair. Yeah. Let me know what you guys think down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out the website, geektales.ca. I've got a bunch of other reviews coming on. Mother of Learning. I've got The Hedge Wizard. I've got book 1 to 5, actually, of He Who Fights with Monsters. I've been really getting into light RPG kind of progression fantasy lately. I blew through them. Solo Leveling is what started it off for me, but Solo Leveling was definitely a little bit unique because it takes a lot more from kind of manga-styled works, whereas these are hardcore, much more westernized. I've enjoyed them a lot. I can't wait to talk to you about it. Okay, I'm gone. Farewell.